Have you ever noticed that mythical creatures often look like they crawled straight out of humanity's deepest fears? Or perhaps our wildest imaginations? From giants who once roamed ancient Britain to a serpent spirit lurking in the lakes of Canada, these beings aren't just spooky stories. They're cultural mirrors. Every society that gave birth to them was expressing something. Their anxieties, their values, their need to explain the unexplainable. Today, we're diving into 6 fascinating mythical creatures, straight from the cultures that created them. And trust me, once you understand their origins, these monsters start looking a lot less random and a lot more meaningful. 1. The Aqrabuamelu, Mesopotamia's scorpion men. Let's begin where written mythology itself originated, ancient Mesopotamia. Imagine a blazing desert sun, cities of clay bricks, and the very first human attempts to make sense of existence. From here emerges the Aqrabuamelu, also called the scorpion men. These beings were half human, half scorpion. Not your friendly neighborhood scorpion either. These were massive, terrifying hybrids with the upper body of a warrior and the lower body of a giant scorpion. They were said to guard the gateways where the sun rose and set, essentially patrolling the horizon itself. The most famous appearance of the Aqrabuamelu is in the Epic of Gilgamesh, written around 2100 BCE. When Gilgamesh journeys to the land of the gods, he encounters these beings at the entrance. The text describes them as so fearsome that even a single glance from them could strike death into mortals. But here's the interesting part. They weren't just monsters. They were protectors. Their scorpion tails symbolized danger, yes, but also vigilance. To the Mesopotamians, who lived in a world of unpredictable floods, hostile deserts, and constant wars, guardians like the Aqrabuamelu reflected the idea of cosmic boundaries. There are things you do not pass unless the gods permit it. In some tales, people feared them as destroyers, but more often they were respected as divine sentinels, so really they weren't villains. They were cosmic border patrols. 2. Gogmagog, the giant of ancient Britain. Now let's travel north to the misty Isles of Britain. Long before London became skyscrapers and double-decker buses, legends told of a massive giant named Gogmagog. His story comes down to us through medieval chronicles, especially Geoffrey of Monmouth in the 12th century. According to the tale, Gogmagog was one of the last of the native giants inhabiting the island when the first human settlers arrived. He was brutal, colossal, and utterly terrifying. In Geoffrey's version, Gogmagog meets his end in a legendary wrestling match. He battles a warrior named Corineus, who was part of the Trojan settlers led by Brutus, the mythical founder of Britain. Corineus lifts the giant and hurls him off a cliff to his death. So, what does this all mean? Gogmagog represents more than just a scary monster. He embodies the idea of a wild, ancient land, a Britain that was once ruled by chaos and monsters, but which was tamed by the arrival of civilization. Giants in myth often symbolize the old order, and defeating them represents human progress. Even today, Gogmagog lives on symbolically. In the city of London, 2 giant statues named Gog and Magog are carried through the Lord Mayor's parade each year. But instead of being enemies, they're guardians of the city, a clever transformation of the myth, turning fear into heritage. 3. The Hecatoncheires, Greece's 100-handed monsters. Now buckle up, because the Greeks took the concept of too many limbs to a whole new level. Meet the Hecatoncheires. Their name literally means 100-handed ones. According to Hesiod's Theogony, written in the 8th century BCE, these were the children of Uranus, the sky, and Gaia, the earth. Imagine giants so massive they had 50 heads and 100 arms each. That's not just nightmare fuel, It's the definition of primordial chaos. At first, their father Uranus hated them, probably because, well, they were terrifying. So he imprisoned them deep in Tartarus, the underworld prison. But later, when Zeus waged war against the Titans, he freed the Hecatoncheires and made them his allies. With their 100 arms, they hurled rocks faster than any army could keep up, and they helped Zeus secure victory in the Titanomachy, the war that established the Olympian gods' rule. Symbolically, they represent overwhelming natural forces, earthquakes, storms, chaos itself. The Greeks, living in a land of volcanic eruptions and violent seas, needed a way to explain the uncontrollable powers of nature. The Hecatoncheires were the embodiment of that fear. Yet just as Zeus managed to turn them into allies, the Greeks saw order emerging from chaos. Even the wildest, most terrifying forces could be tamed and redirected. 4. The Kludde, Belgium's shape-shifting terror. Next stop, Belgium, where a creature called the Kludde still haunts dark roads in folklore. This isn't a godlike being or a titan. The Kludde is much closer to what we'd call a ghost story. Originating from Flemish oral tradition, the Kludde is a shape-shifting nocturnal spirit. It could take the form of a black dog with glowing eyes, a shriveled man, or even a winged dragon. Whichever form it took, it was always accompanied by the chilling sound of bells ringing in the darkness. Imagine walking home at night along an isolated path, hearing those bells echo in the distance, and then seeing the Kludde lurking in the shadows. That's the kind of fear it embodied, the fear of traveling at night, when dangers, both real and supernatural, were at their height. In some versions, the Kludde clung to travelers' backs like a demonic hitchhiker, growing heavier and heavier until the victim collapsed. In others, it was seen as an omen of death. This idea of a malevolent black dog is not unique to Belgium. England has similar legends, like the Barghest or Black Shuck. But in Flemish culture, the Kludde specifically embodied the dangers of rural life, where superstition blended with very real risks of thieves, wolves, or simply losing your way. It's a perfect example of how folklore personifies everyday fears, turning the ordinary dangers of nighttime travel into something monstrous. 5. The Ogopogo, Canada's lake monster. Finally, let's cross the ocean to North America. In British Columbia, there's a legendary lake monster known as the Ogopogo. Think of it as Canada's version of the Loch Ness Monster, but with a much deeper cultural origin. For the indigenous peoples of the Okanagan Valley, the creature wasn't a monster in the Western sense. They called it Naha'itk, a spirit of the water. It lived in Lake Okanagan, and people believed it demanded respect, and even offerings. Before crossing the lake, travelers would bring food or tobacco to appease the spirit, ensuring safe passage. Descriptions of the Ogopogo vary, but most say it looks like a giant sea serpent or dragon. When European settlers arrived, they reinterpreted the story through their own lens, turning it into a cryptid like Bigfoot or Nessie, something to hunt, photograph, or prove scientifically. But the indigenous perspective is crucial here. To them, the Ogopogo wasn't just a scary creature. It was a guardian spirit, a reminder that nature itself demands humility. The lake was powerful, mysterious, and potentially deadly, and Ogopogo symbolized that truth. So while modern pop culture often treats it as a kind of tourist attraction or lake monster mystery in its original culture, the Ogopogo was, and still is, a sacred being. So what do the scorpion men of Mesopotamia, the giants of Britain, the hundred-handed monsters of Greece, the shape-shifting spirit of Belgium, and the lake serpent of Canada all have in common? At first glance, nothing. They're wildly different in form and setting. But if you look closer, every single one of them is a reflection of cultural fears and values. The Aqrabuamelu guarded sacred boundaries, showing how the Mesopotamians viewed order versus chaos. Gogmagog symbolized the taming of a wild land, turning myth into national identity. The Hecatoncheires embodied chaos so immense that even gods had to wrestle it into submission. The Kludde reminded rural Belgians of the dangers lurking in the night. And the Ogopogo taught respect for nature's mysteries, long before cryptid hunters turned it into a tourist legend. Monsters aren't just scary stories, they're lessons. They tell us what each culture valued, what they feared, and how they understood their place in the world. So the next time you hear about a monster lurking in the shadows, remember, it's not just about what it looks like, it's about what it means. If you enjoyed this dive into mythical creatures and the cultures that birthed them, hit the like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into history and mythology. Also, let me know in the comments which of these creatures would you least want to encounter in the dark. Until next time, stay curious, stay respectful of the myths, and keep exploring the stories that shaped our world.